I don't know, far longer to preach my way through the Sermon on the Mount than I suspect it took Jesus, because it took me several weeks. There's a pattern, though, that from the Sermon of the Mount and from the rest of the book of Matthew that we're going to see, and I'm going to try to remember to point it out each week as I have examples of it. The book of Matthew is written as a gospel to, really the audience is the Jewish people, the Hebrew people. And so it is written from a perspective that's meant to grab their attention. And sometimes, because I'm not Jewish, I don't get those things. Like, that isn't naturally how I was brought up. That wasn't naturally, I didn't go to Sabbath school and get some of the lessons and understand, their point of view, because that's not my point of view. And one of the things that I have come to learn that is a very Jewish thinking is this. The Jewish people had a question that they struggled with. And that question is, am I obeying the Torah? Am I obeying the law, the teachings of God? Am I doing that because God has promised to reward me if I do these things? And that was very much a very real, tangible reward that they were promised when they were standing on the mountains between God and God, saying, okay, these are the blessings you'll get if you follow my law, and these are the cursings or the punishments that you'll get if you don't follow my law. Pick. And so that was a very tangible part of their religion. Am I going to follow God because he's going to bless me and he's going to bless the nation if we're doing what we're supposed to do? Or am I following the law? Am I following the Torah because that's the right thing to do because God said so? And that was a conflict that they had. So when Jesus starts out the Sermon of the Mount and he starts talking about blessed are you if, he is addressing this idea of, is my faith genuine? Is my faith genuine? And I've heard Christians even ask this question. I was brought up in the church. Mom and dad were both Christians. We had a great Christian home. I've always known that Jesus was God's son. I've always believed since I was, going to the little ones' preschool, Sunday school class. I've always believed this. So is my faith genuine, or do I just have it because mom and dad had it? Do I go to church because I have a real faith and a real need to draw closer to God, or do I go to church because grandma went to that church? I'm a member of this church because, grandma and grandpa were, and certainly they're in heaven. I better do that too. Or do I have a real love for the Lord? So this idea of a genuine faith, a genuine walk, a genuine submission or obedience to the Lord is a very Jewish idea because they would struggle with that. Am I only obeying God because he'll zap us if I don't? And they got zapped more than once. I mean, the Old Testament's full of those stories, right, of rebellion and the punishment that comes in and then them turning back and God restoring them. And the whole point of the Pharisees the Pharisees had was they just wanted to keep the people from messing up again so they'd have to go into captivity again. They had 400 years of trying to keep people on the right path, and they had devised rules to do that. Right? They were kind of the people going, okay, we just got to purify the nation. We've got to purify the nation. We've got to keep the nation pure. And Jesus, when he gets up and he starts teaching on the Sermon on the Mount, he says, okay, you're going to be blessed if you're this way. You're going to be blessed if you're this way. You're going to be blessed if you do this. You're going to be granted mercy if you yourselves are merciful. And guys, it's not about these rules over here where you're going, well, as long as I don't kill the guy, God's okay with me. He says, no, it's what's in your heart. It's what's in your head. It's the way that you think, and it's the way that you speak to each other. And that's going to keep coming out as we go through here. So Matthew chapter 8, which is where we're going to pick up this morning, starts out this way. It says, when Jesus had come down from the mountain, he's just delivered this awesome lesson about how to have a genuine faith in God, how to genuinely be the people of God, the way the people of God are. He's just come down from preaching it. There's still a whole bunch of people still around. He has just delivered this message. He comes down. Great crowds followed him. Well, why? Well, it tells us back at the end of chapter 7, he's preaching in a way nobody's ever preached before. He's telling them how to have a genuine faith. So he comes down, and these people are still following him like, no one's ever done this for me, by the way. When I go outside the door, Jim, just one more word of wisdom. Right? That's never happened. But with Jesus, they're hanging around going, well, wait, he might say something else. Let's write this down. I never heard anything like that. I feel closer to God just from having been here. Maybe one more thing he'll say. So they're following him. They're right there with him. Now, there was a leper. So he's coming off the mountain, and here's this leper. He comes to him, and he knelt before him. Now, lepers are supposed to keep their distance. This guy doesn't do that. This guy comes right up to Jesus, and he kneels down in front of him. You're not supposed to be doing that, by the way. He says to him, Lord, if you choose, you can make me clean. Now, Jesus wasn't up on the mountain doing miracles. Jesus is up there delivering, just one fantastic sermon that we wish we had on videotape today. This leper comes up to him, and maybe the leper stood back far enough he could listen to what Jesus was saying. I don't know. But something that this leper knew that, hey, this is a man of God. Now, Jesus had not proclaimed himself Son of God at this point in his ministry. He wasn't proclaiming himself Messiah. That wasn't even being said. This is very early in Jesus' ministry. So here comes this leper who maybe was up there at some place on the mountain, pushed back from the other people, but close enough where he could hear. And the lepers decided this has got to be a prophet. This is a man of God. So the leper comes up and he kneels down in front of him. He says, if you're willing, you can make me clean. Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I do choose, be made clean. This guy who nobody's supposed to touch because he's unclean. If you touch this guy, you become unclean yourself. Jesus reached down, I choose. Be clean. Now, it says immediately. Immediately, Jesus puts his hand on him, and immediately, poof, he's clean. He's healed of everything. Underline that word in your Bible. Immediately. He did not have to wait weeks and weeks as you generally gradually get better. He did not have to buy some special anointing cream in the church bookstore and rub that on him 3 times a day. When Jesus does a miracle, it's a miracle. It happens now. Immediately, he's made clean. Now, Jesus says to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them. In other words, in the Old Testament, in the law, there was a process that if you were cleansed of leprosy, and people could be, because sometimes it was just a temporary condition, but if you were cleansed of leprosy, you went and you offered a sacrifice. The priest took your sacrifice, and now you were clean. And now that you've been made clean, you can participate in society. You can participate in worship. You can go back to life as normal as a Jew. And Jesus' instructions are, don't tell anybody about this. You'll notice that that's probably one of the most disobeyed commands of Jesus during his ministry. But he tells them, don't tell anybody, just go do what the law says you're supposed to do. Jesus had this man keep the Mosaic law. He didn't take the law and set it aside. Jesus says later that he came to fulfill the law, but he made sure that they did what was required in the law. Now, he goes down and he's walking, and they go to Capernaum. I don't know how long it took to walk there, so there's probably a little ways. When he entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, appealing to him, saying, Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed in terrible distress. Now, this is kind of weird because here you got a Roman, and for some reason, you know, this Roman who's stationed in an occupied territory, dealing with a rebellious and obnoxious people, which is what the Romans thought the Jews were. This Roman somehow has found out about this preacher, this man of God, and he goes down to this man of God and he says, Lord, I've got a servant. Now, I don't know if this servant was a Greek. I don't know if he's a Roman. I don't know if maybe this was a Jewish servant. It could have been a Jewish servant. So he went to the Jewish man of God to seek for help. I don't know what the centurion's logic was, but he goes to Jesus and he says, Lord, he's paralyzed. He's in terrible distress. He said to him, Jesus says to him, I will come and cure him. Now, that in and of itself is kind of weird because Jews didn't really go into Roman households if they could avoid it. And Jesus says, hey, I'll come cure him. Your request is for somebody else. Your request is for the servant of yours. He's in bad shape. He can't walk. He's paralyzed. I'll come. I'll do that. You think, well, Jesus is a pretty good guy. We know he is. He's Jesus, right? Jesus says, well, I'll come do this for you. The centurion answered him, Lord, I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof. More than anything, I want you to come heal him, yes, but I'm not worthy. See, I'm a Roman, and I know you Jews don't associate with us, and I not only am I a Roman and Jews don't associate with us, but you're obviously a man of God, and I'm not worthy to have you come to my house. That's quite a thing to have to say to Jesus. To humble yourself and say, yes, I'm the military leader here. Yes, I'm the big man on campus. Yes, I have all these people at my disposal. He could have sent a squad of soldiers, pick Jesus up, carry him there. Not that I'm sure that would have had the effect that he wanted. But this guy is in charge. And he says, I'm not worthy of having you come. But only speak the word, and my servant will be healed. Lord, I can't have you come to my house. I'm not worthy of that. But I know if you say it, it will be so. Now, this is different than the way a lot of these other healers back then would do stuff. They'd have to come and, wave some incense and lay hands and maybe go through a big hoopla. But this Roman says, no, it doesn't work that way. I know what real power looks like. I know what real power, what real authority is. And I believe you have real authority from God. He says, no. He says, I'm a man, let's say here, for I also am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my slave, do this, and the slave does it. I don't need you to come. I'm not worthy of that. All I need is for you to speak the word. It's going to happen. It's not going to happen the way the other phony faith healers do it. It's not going to happen the way a doctor would do it, where a doctor would come and lay hands and some medicines or something. It's not going to happen that way. I know that you are under authority, and I know how authority works, because when I say something to my soldiers, they do this. When I say to my servant, he does this. And you're under authority of divine power. Now, he may not have believed he was the Son of God, but he believed that Jesus was somebody who had divine power. And he knew if Jesus said it, God would do it. It would be done. And so he explains this thing to him, and Jesus says, when Jesus heard it, verse 10, he was amazed and said to those who followed him, "Truly I tell you, in no one in Israel have I found such faith." Everybody in Israel, they were used to the idea, they've been brought up going to Sabbath school, they were used to the idea of prophets. They were used to the idea of a prophet telling you, well, if you do this, God will heal you. If I go and the story of Elijah, where he visits the widow's house, hey, what do you have? I've got a little bit of oil in the house. Okay, get all the jars, not a few of them. And she starts pouring the oil, and there's a miracle work, because they were physically there. When we see the miracles of when they went in the promised land with Joshua, okay, God's going to make a miracle, but you guys are going to have to do something to make that miracle happen. You're going to have to walk around Jericho 7 times. When we see these things happening, man always played a part. There's always some part for man to play. Except for Jesus comes here, and there's no part for man to play, because God is with us. That's what the word Emmanuel means. God is with us. So God can speak it and say it. And Jesus says, nobody in Israel believes like this guy believes. Nobody in Israel is aware and has the faith like this guy has. They want me to be a prophet. They're okay with me being a prophet. They're okay with me being a good teacher. They're okay with all of that, with him being an the occasional rabbi. Right? They were okay with that. But Jesus is now saying, wait a second, this Roman, he's got a faith that's better than you Jews. Because nobody believes what he believes. Jesus is amazed. I tell you, no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from the east and the west and will eat with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, and there will be while the heirs of the kingdom will be thrown into outer darkness. Whoa. If you're a Jew, this is hard to hear. And he's telling it. The only Roman that's there is the centurion. The rest of them hanging around with these big crowds are Jewish crowds. And Jesus says, hey, I tell you, in the kingdom of heaven, lots of people are going to come to the feast. They're going to eat with Abraham and Isaac. And we're going to be there. And it's going to be full of people. But what does he say? I tell you, many are going to come, while the heirs of the kingdom will be thrown into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. In the final judgment, there's going to be people there from all over. There's going to be people in the kingdom of heaven from every conceivable race and language and people group. And yet Jesus takes this centurion's faith and says, but the heirs of the kingdom, you Jews? Actually, I shouldn't say it like that. If Jesus is saying it, us Jews, Jesus was a Jew. Don't ever forget that. Us Jews, many of us are going to be thrown out where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. And he's comparing and contrasting faith that believes who God says he is, versus doing it the way man thinks it should be done. I tell you, this is the way it's going to be. Many of those who are chosen, who are called, aren't going to show up. They just figure it's good enough to be part of the right group. Whereas this guy has the right faith. In fact, his faith is stronger than anybody else I found in Israel. So then what Jesus says is, and to the centurion, Jesus said, go, let it be done according to your faith. And the servant was healed that hour. Wow. How did he heal the leper? Immediately. How did the centurion find out it was the hour? He probably went back home and said, you're well. And the guy said, yeah, 3 o'clock. He said, really, at 3 o'clock? That's when I was talking to this Jesus guy. I don't know if it was 3 o'clock. Really? How did it happen? Immediately. God can do anything he wants as quickly as he wants. Now, what that usually leads us to believe is that when we ask for something, we should get it immediately. And he doesn't always do that. Sometimes he makes us wait. Sometimes the timing isn't right. Sometimes God has his own sovereign will that, oddly enough, he did not ask Jim Hanley how he should do it. I have frequently tried to serve God in an advisory capacity, and he has never taken my advice. And he wouldn't be God if he did. So this goes on. We're going to finish up with these few verses. When Jesus entered Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. Now, there's a couple things we need to know about Peter. If Peter has a mother-in-law, what is Peter? Married. He's married. He's apparently the only one of the 12 who was. And Jesus, through a big chunk of his ministry, makes sure his ministry is in and around the area where Peter's wife lives. I find that curious. I also find it considerate. But Jesus goes to Peter's house. His mother-in-law is in bed. He touches her hand and the fever left her, and she got up and began to serve him. Now, we're going to see something happen next because Jesus has he's performed this miracle in front of this crowd with the leper. He's come into Capernaum. He's performed a miracle just by speaking it and healing the centurion's servant. And now, yes, he healed Peter. I don't think the crowd was allowed into Peter's mother-in-law's bedroom. But he did this privately. But now he's done this. She fixes him dinner. And that evening, they brought to him many who were possessed with demons. Now, he's just been healing sick people up to this point, and that water into wine incident. That evening he brings to them many who were possessed with demons, and he cast out with a word. He cast out the spirits with a word, and he cured all. Underline that word too. All who were sick. Everybody with a demon got the demon cast out. Everybody who was sick got their need met. Verse 17 says, this was to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took our infirmities and bore our diseases. Now, we'll pick up in 18 next week. Jesus does all of these miracles. In fact, we're going to read about a lot more miracles. We got a lot more miracles to go. But you're going to notice something. Jesus is teaching and preaching. And sometimes Matthew is going to say he was addressing the crowds. He's not going to tell us what it was. My assumption is that his messages were very much like what we have written down in the Sermon on the Mount. Other places, Matthew's going to record exactly what Jesus said as an explanation. He's going to put in kind of what we would call preacher stories. Here's Jesus is going to give a parable and say the kingdom of heaven is like this, or the kingdom of heaven is like this other thing. He's going to do that as a way of explaining. But the Sermon on the Mount is one spot where we have sort of this big body of what Jesus was telling people. And I assume, this is the wisdom of Jim, for whatever that's good for, I assume he was telling parts of, or maybe re-preaching the same stuff that he had preached in the Sermon on the Mount. Hey guys, you're going to be blessed if you're this way. This is the way you have a genuine faith. This is the way you need to think in your heart. Don't worry about what the Pharisees are telling you about this. Yeah, do that because they sat in Moses' seat and they have the authority to tell you what the law says. However, if your righteousness isn't better than their righteousness, you ain't getting into the kingdom of heaven. This is the way your righteousness is better. It's the way you think. It's the way you speak. It's what you hold in your heart. And it's how willing you are to forgive. How willing you are to give grace and show mercy to the people who've made you mad. To the people who you think have wronged you. How willing are you to lay aside your pride? How willing are you to lay aside the way you want it done? The centurion, the way that they would have normally done it is you go get the holy man, he comes and he does some chant or something, right? He's got some magic potion or some incense. The Roman centurion said, I don't need that. I just need you to say it. If you say it, it's going to happen. And Jesus says to us, if we'll put our faith in him like that centurion did, we can be one of the many peoples from the east and the west who come and sit in the kingdom of heaven and feast with Abraham. That's one potluck I want to be at. I'm pretty sure there's pecan pie in the dessert table at that potluck, right? Whatever it is, the thing it is that you like best. And if you notice that heaven is described as a feast. Whatever it is that you like best, you're going to be part of that with the Lord. I don't know what that day is going to look like. I know I want to be there. We're going to get more of these, and there's going to be time and time and time again that Jesus is going to demonstrate that what he's saying is true because of the power he has to say it and to give evidence that he is in fact a prophet of God, which is what he is initially proving to the people. Later on in the book of Matthew, he's going to start proclaiming himself the Son of Man. And they're going to start asking, well, what's that? Now pay attention. Messiah is here. Even the Pharisees, toward the end of his life, as they're plotting to kill him, is this guy the Messiah? I don't know, but when the Messiah comes, can he do more miracles than him? We're going to see the evidence from a Jewish perspective over and over and over again that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. Thank you for listening and being attentive. There's going to be a song, an invitation song, that if you've got a need, we'd like to hear about it. If there's a way the church can serve you, if the congregation here can serve you, we want to know. If you need to get right with the Lord, happy to talk to you about that, happy to study with you. If you're not in the Lord, we'll actually be thrilled to discuss getting yourself right with the Lord. Hunter's going to lead a song. If you'd all stand up with us and if you let me know about your need, we'd be happy to serve you. Hunter?